With 2 races left this season, the IndyCar iRacing Series heads west to one of the most iconic tracks in the world. Set in the hills of Monterey, California, just 10 miles from the west coast, the WeatherTech Laguna Raceway has 11 corners and 55 meters of total elevation change, but it's turn 8 at the top of the hill that has been immortalized around the world. It's a roller coaster ride also known as the corkscrew, and the 18-meter drop that leaves your stomach behind might separate our championship contenders here today. There are still 3 drivers fighting for this year's title, and it's the Canadian Adam Crane that holds a 31-point lead over the Swede Hugo Olsen, with the Frenchman David Soranzo lurking a further 12 points back. Hello and thank you for joining us here, live on the iRacing Esports Network for RaceSpot TV's coverage of round 14 of the IndyCar iRacing Series. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, doing double duty on camera work and commentary, and I'm delighted to be joined by Lorenzo Bondo. And Lorenzo, this is a tight and twisty circuit, but we do see some very fast speeds here. What are you expecting from the 74-lap affair that awaits us?
Hi Arjuna, hi everyone. Yeah, it's going to be a very tight track, to be very honest. I think overtakes will be harder in this track, more than so than we saw in Barber last week. And we got the very iconic corkscrew corner. Maybe, who knows, we might see a Zanardi move in here, like the overtake. It's going to be a very interesting run over here, about 74 laps. So 2 things are going to be very important over here. We were discussing earlier: fuel, and most importantly, tire consumption.
This is going to be a race of strategy. We take a quick look at the schedule, round number 14 here from the WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. In a few weeks' time, we wrap it all up from the home of the Indy cars using the road configuration of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But like we said off the top, it's a close fight for the championship, and the top 3 drivers have been battling it out the last few weeks. Each of them have held a hand to that top step. But Lorenzo, as we approach the zenith here of this championship fight, it is the Canadian Adam Crane in a very, very strong position, leading going into the second to last race.
Yeah, this I think the change between last week and this week has kind of shifted the grounds of the championship standing itself. Hugo Olsen had a very horrible runs during the oval, some of the oval races, and that allowed Adam Crane to have some good results up in the standings, and just past Hugo Olsen, and then be on the top of the standings. But we know Laguna Seca, again, very hard track, and position of here is definitely going to be key for any one of those drivers, especially the ones in front.
Absolutely, and still 3 minutes left in qualifying right now as we say hello to you for the first time today. We're going to take a look at an onboard lap, and while this is a tight and twisty circuit, like I say, some very, very high speeds here. You can see exiting turn number 4. This is on the entry to the corkscrew at the top of the circuit, then that 18-meter plunge down the hill. Let's go ahead and take a look at the onboard lap. Coming out of the last corner, you want to get a really good run off the line. You climb up the hill through this little kink that is turn 1, and then set up on the right-hand side of the track, spotting your braking zone, that white brake marker on the track, then hugging this inside of the double apex left. The Andretti hairpins very tough, trying to run all the way right. And now turn number 3. One thing you'll notice here is those red anti-cut codes. They are the defining feature of this track, and something that all these drivers are going to be looking to get as close to as possible. Out of turn number 4 very fast, now into the tricky braking zone of turn 5. This is important to get a very good run all the way up the hill here. The critical turn 6, one of the scariest corners on the track. A little bit of a brake on the inside, get all the way to the curb on the left-hand side and attack the throttle on the run up to the corkscrew, where you spot your braking zone on the right-hand side, the marshal post. As you come down the hill, look straight, you'll find those trees there as your reference point to turn right back down the hill. Then down through the left, that is Rainy Curve, setting up for the second to last corner. A little bit of a brake on this downhill right. And then the last corner. Don't do what this driver is about to do. Brake a little bit deep, lock the inside front, then 4 wheels to the right side of that white line. That will be a 1x in the real race. And some of these drivers have already been being caught out by that in qualifying, Lorenzo.
Yeah, they did. I saw Hendrik Augustine, one of these drivers, being caught up by that last chicane, and also that run down from the corkscrew. And again, I think that is going to be more complicated with the brakes still a little bit colder. And also the tires also coating that maybe in the first 2 or 3 laps. Track temperature we're going to be seeing real soon. It's going to be really interesting. It isn't very hot for Laguna Seca standards, but it's gonna be quite complicated for the drivers to get used to.
Yeah, there you can see the track conditions. It is a fairly cool ambient temperature of 19 degrees Celsius, but that 37-degree track temp a little bit warmer, but cold tires are going to be a thing that all the drivers have to deal with coming out of the pit lane. I can speak from personal experience. It's very easy to lose it on those colder tires, but 30 seconds still left in qualifying. We take a look at the left-hand side of your screen. You'll see one of the championship contenders, Hugo Olsen, in second. It's his teammate, Adam Blocker, currently on the provisional pole position. He's missed a lot of the races this season, Lorenzo. Adam Blocker, who won the last season of the IndyCar Open roadside in the iRacing service, but right now out in pole position, looking good.
Yeah, in the outside position, looking good. But if we're going to be talking about iRating and things like that, he's the number one driver. He's the highest I-rated driver in the field with 6,049 iRating. A very experienced driver, not driving just the Indy cars. Very experienced, I know, in GT cars as well. Seeing him in a few leagues. As qualify is already over, cars will align in the grid at Juna. And I think this launch start, this rolling start, will be very important. That turn one can get very chaotic with the braking itself alone.
And let's take a look at the starting grid. It is Adam Blocker for Powerslide Motorsports with a 106.616 to grab this pole position. And it is a Powerslide front row with his teammate Hugo Olsen in second. Second row of the grid, Andreas Eek for Team Talent, looking to climb in front of championship rival Cesar Menzado, who lines up next to him. Row number 3, it is the other two drivers involved in the top 3 of the championship fight, Adam Crane and David Soranzo, with Team Heiskenveld Stefan Petrat lining up next to Hendrik Lindoff. Row number 5, it is Lester, I'm going to try and butcher this name, but Hirokak. Then you've got Andrew Kinsella on the edge of the top 10 with Carlos Gomez Duterte and Rashad Craig on row number 6. Connie Naslin, Matthias Kraus, Vilda Wallen, Eric Winter, then John Downing, Christopher Block, Matthew Brabham, and Andrew Wood completes the top 20. Just 6 more cars on the grid. One of the biggest grids we've seen here in the IndyCar iRacing Series. Oliver Silver for 3 Crowns Racing, Hendrik Augustin next to him, Radek Yorka, Aaron Roos. Then the last row of the grid, 2 drivers who didn't set a qualifying time, Daniel Talbert and Justin Petschauer. But Lorenzo, you did talk about that run down in towards turn number 1. It's all controlled by the pole sitter here. And that run into turn 1, the double left-hander hairpin, is going to be very tricky. And we often see drivers trying to make a bold move and getting squeezed out into the dirt.
Yeah, and this is very similar to what Barber offers. You know, there is no runoff areas. Even though we see that what would be nearly white desert sand area is still sloppy enough for you. If you go outside, you're probably going to have a little bit of a trip to the wall. So drivers need to be extra safe in these first few laps to avoid any possible crashes. But of course, there will be maybe 1 or 2 other drivers who want to play more aggressive with the braking. It is possible you can fiddle a little bit with the brakings, especially in the first few laps, try to get what would be a good cut into your opponents, but they have to drive safely no matter what.
And some people saying in our YouTube chat, the worst track in the world. Well, I might be a little bit biased, Lorenzo. I live just a 90-minute drive up the road from this track in the Bay Area, but I really, really enjoy this track, and that's not just because I won this very race. This time last year, I won it on the fuel strategy, and that's something we should talk about off the bat here. 74 laps. The fuel window looks to be about 24 laps. So we're going to see some of these drivers trying to do a little bit of fuel saving, trying to cut out one additional pit stop, and I think those are the drivers going to be really fighting for the win here today.
Yeah, basically your fuel saving into turn 1, maybe a little bit one on the Rahal straight, all the way down to corkscrew if you really want to be courageous enough to try to save that fuel and not go for an overtake if you don't have the opportunity. So it's going to be really interesting, especially I think for Hugo Olsen, who needs those points. He needs a good result to propel himself into a championship position for the last round. So anything goes as they're about to head into the corkscrew anytime now, and then step themselves into turn number 9, 10, and 11 to start this race.
And I think, like you say, Hugo Olsen, he was in the driver's seat of the championship for so long this season. Unfortunately, 2 consecutive bad rounds in the last 2 oval races of the year have put him in a little bit of a deficit as compared to the Canadian Adam Crane. So a lot of work for the Swede to do from the outside of row number 1, but it will be his teammate Adam Blocker who's going to take the field to green. The iRacing pace truck dives down into what is a very tricky pit exit. And Adam Blocker, you can hear the pit alarms going off in the background, and straight away going to get a good jump. And look at the defense that Hugo Olsen has to put with Andreas Ike behind, and Adam Crane as well, getting a monster jump around the outside. He goes, and Adam Crane looks to slot himself up into P number 3. Not going to be able to make it stick though, as Ike is going to hold that position, and down through turn number 1. It's all clean throughout the field right now. Drivers trying to make aggressive moves further back. You can see though the big mover was Adam Crane with Lorenzo. What was an absolutely crazy move into turn number 1.
Yeah, he made that move on the inside work very well. Took the opportunity of one of the other drivers to go into the outside, lose a little bit of traction. The tires are still good. They're trying to get up to temperature. Might take 2 to 3 laps to get into that good temperature. Oh, I see Cesare Manzato just having a runoff into the Rahal straight just on the exit. Lost 1 position to Stefan Petrat, and now it's going to be under the pressure of David Soranzo and the drivers up in the back.
And David Soranzo did not get a great start. Starting from 5th position, I do believe. He's now holed up behind Cesar Manzato. Stefan Petrat already pulling a few tenths of a second advantage to Cesar Manzato, who made the mistake. But as we cross the line for the first time, the order is Adam Blocker, Hugo Olsen, Andreas Ike, Adam Crane, Stefan Petrat, and then Cesar Manzato in 6th position. And the gap's already starting to form. There's 14 seconds now separating your 26 car field, and something that you don't really think about at a tight and twisty track like this, Lorenzo, is the traffic management. And I'm expecting a lot of these drivers, with the pace difference we saw in qualifying, Adam Blocker might get onto the back of some of these lapped cars in just 10 laps or so.
Yeah, I would say maybe 10-12 laps. Then it's going to get a little bit funny for Adam Blocker and trying to make the traffic work into his fashion. But look at the gap already opened by Adam. 1 second already to Hugo Olsen. Normally in shorter tracks, we saw that in Barber, it's harder for you to break away from the draft gap that you have to your opponent. Now he has nearly a 1.4 second gap now, increasing to Hugo. But the problem goes for Hugo. He's not being able to break away from Andreas Elk and Adam Crane. He's still suffering under the pressure, but now I think drivers are marking one another, just trying to find their pace and find their own rhythm, and then go maybe for overtakes. But again, we've mentioned here, fuel consumption always important.
And, maybe some people may have been forgiven for assuming, Lorenzo, that, you see the 2 teammates lining up on the front row, knowing that Adam Crane has got a 31-point advantage to Hugo Olsen. Maybe some team orders would have come into effect, but Adam Blocker straight to work now. The gap almost up to 2 seconds as we watch 3rd place Andreas Ike with Adam Crane right behind them. There is action further back in your field, though. You think about this not necessarily being a passing track, Lorenzo, but as we jump back to 19th and 20th, we see Matthew Brabham getting very, very wide. Well, he just got past Hendrik Augustine, so 19th and 20th really scrapping it out as Augustine now looks to the inside as they head towards turn number 6. Who's going to back it out here? Was the car on the inside, so Brabham's going to hold on to it, but some really, really scrappy driving throughout the field right now.
Yeah, good movement by Matthew Brabham to actually seal the deal. And Augustine, he nearly went for that move into the Rahal straight. Oh, we see a driver going on. I think that's Oliver Silva just going off into the exit of the corkscrew. The car just decided to lose traction on the acceleration out of the corkscrew. Lost about 2 positions, now back in 20th, 4th place. Well, still a long race to run. We're about 4 laps in, so he's still plenty of time to make up ground for the driver of the number 23 car.
Yeah, and the track just falls away from you there as you head down that huge drop. And I talked about it separating some of our championship contenders. Well, further back in your field, drivers having issues. Oliver Silva's teammate, though, Connie Naslund, really in a big scrap right now. He's in 12th place, trying to chase down Carlos Duterte in front of him. And Richard Craig and Matthias Kreis are in close pursuit as well. Action throughout your field. We talk about this being a tight and twisty track. The average speed upwards of 120 miles an hour. They go through the turn 6 kink right now, up through the Rahal straight down in towards the corkscrew now. And we're only on lap 4 out of 74 here. The action, Lorenzo, really kicking off early.
Yeah, really kicking off early, and I think that's going to be more usual, more natural for the mid-pack off the field. They're basically within their own very closed up, bunched up rhythm. So they're not going to be able to break off that easily. It's going to take mistakes from the drivers themselves, overshooting a corner, not hitting the apex properly, or maybe over braking the car a little bit. So you open up the chance for another driver to pull in, overtake you, and then pull out a good gap. So it actually has a good rhythm to break away from you and try to go for more positions. But it's going to be really cool to see this mid-action pack. In the meanwhile, I'm keeping close tabs into Adam Gray because the pressure is huge that he's putting on Andreas L.
Oh, and there's been an issue. That's Aaron Roofs, who's around with some minor right side damage. We'll get the replay up. It was into turn number 1. He was battling with Radek Sjorka, and here comes the replay. That green car behind is Sjorka, the number 19. He looked down to the inside, and under braking just appears as though he may have looped it around on himself. We'll try and get another angle of that one, but going too wide into turn 1, it's a common passing opportunity, and unfortunately Aaron Roofs getting a little bit caught out there.
Yeah, I think Sakura just gave enough room for Roofs over here to make that line on the outside, but I think Roofs just tried to, put down a little bit of pressure on that inside line, trying to pinch Sakura in, and just caught himself right in the middle of, making a bad move. Unfortunately gets spinned out and being thrown all the way back to last place. It's going to be quite complicated for Roofs to make it all back. 5 seconds behind Silva. But again, long race.
Oh, no.
Strategies up in the field. Go ahead.
There was a big issue there on the start-finish straight. It's Hendrik Augustin who's still stationary, and I'm not sure who that other car that came around to hit him was. Here comes the replay up on your screen, though. He's coming out of the last corner. I believe he's going to lose it on his own, the number 5 car. Just lose the rear end of the car under power. It's a very common mistake. Here's where the mistake comes, Lorenzo. He backs up onto the racing line, and I believe that's the 24 machine of Daniel Twerbert that had nowhere to go.
Yeah, that's the really thing you really don't want to do, especially that's kind of a apex exit line that you're taking on the very last turn, on turn number 11. You're backing away, you're basically blocking the exit of your opponents, and unfortunately that contact had to happen. I don't know how much damage that will carry into the side pod, the last side pod of Hendrik Augustin. But these cars, if they take some damage on the side pod, it will affect the downforce and then the precision of turn in and stability mid corner out of those cars. So it can get a little bit complicated for Augustine.
And something to remember is these Indy cars, the Dallara IR18 does not have the brand new iRacing damage model that's coming in the future, hopefully sooner rather than later. So some of these cars might be able to take a little bit more damage than you might be able to do in the newer damage model, Lorenzo. However, where the new damage module really shines, in my opinion, is the ability to fix some of that damage. And unfortunately, when you get the side pod damage here in the IR18, that often really compromises you for the remainder of the race.
Yeah, because I think, if I recall correctly, in terms of body damage, might be the longest in terms of repairs. And not always when you repair the damage on the IR18 will be 100% fixed, literally 100% fixed. It is most like a kiss and go, kiss on the side and go, and just pray for a wishing star that everything works in your own way during mid-race. So it's quite complicated, you really need to be cautious about those side pods.
Absolutely. You see the line that Kinsella took there through turn 1. That's what you can do here into turn 2 at Laguna Seca. You can run all the way wide. I've seen some drivers actually put 4 wheels to the right side of the white line, just trying to maximize the corner width. And right now Kinsella up 2 positions from his starting place. We're scrapping it out with Lindhoff for just a little bit, but now the gap up to 9/10 of a second, and back in 8th place. He's 1.5 seconds behind David Soranzo in front. So unfortunately Soranzo has been a little bit left out here. The top 6 cars have broken away. There are 12 seconds that separates them, with Adam Blocker up to now an 8-second advantage over Hugo Olsen. But we'll take a look at the battle now for 5th place on your track. That's the Team Heiskenveld machine of Stefan Petrat, with Cesar Manzado right behind him, and not the ideal start for Manzado at the early stages of this race, but we talk about this being a strategy race. It's not just about trying to save fuel and your tires here, Lorenzo. The undercut versus overcut is something that a lot of drivers have been contemplating, and I've seen the overcut be a very, very powerful move here, which is just adds another element to the strategy here. When you know that you want to be trying to make the stints as long as possible, trying to cut out an entire pit stop in this race, you don't really have the flexibility to not try and do the overcut here, rather, and maybe try something different in the undercut. You're almost forced onto one particular strategy.
Yeah, and especially if you're with your face towards the wind, you know, like Adam Blocker, Hugo Olsen, and Andreas Eich are actually doing right now. So you don't have that mind to strategize. You might be concerned with your opponent trying to close down the gap on you. You try to be, you know, pedal to the metal fast. But let me just bring one quick stat over here. Of all 26 drivers driving in the field, the only driver who is actually breaking the 1.7 barrier is Adam Blocker. He's just done another really fast lap, 1:07.384. He's the only driver who I've seen in these past 5 or 6 laps to be able to consistently put those laps in. I think that's where the strategy game is actually appearing a little bit. I think Adam is just going full pedal to the metal, not saving 1 inch of fuel. And, you know, Jamai go for that 3 pit stop strategy in comparison to the other drivers.
Well, I don't hate to, I hate contradicting my commentators here on RaceSpot TV, Lorenzo.
Go ahead.
Having talked to Adam Blocker in the lead up to this race, I can almost 100% guarantee you that he is fuel saving as he gets a little bit wide through turn 6 at the King.
Arjuna. He's your teammate, so don't forget about that.
He's my teammate, but the thing I always was amazed by Adam, we've seen some great fuel savers here in the IndyCar iRacing series. I think of Joshua Chin, who, you know, as we've seen in the SCO series, Lorenzo, is one of the best fuel savers across all of the service. Well, Adam Blocker, until very recently, was a right foot braker in the IndyCar. Can you imagine these kind of cars trying to drive as right foot braking? As we now take a look at the battle for 12th place, Connie Naslund has a swarm of cars behind him now. And I believe that is Matthias Kraus, who got a little bit wide out of the hill, and there was a little bit of contact. Vilde Wallen was forced off the road for a second, but able to gather it back up all cleanly.
Yeah, you can see the car is all clean. He's just trying to, you know, use the draft full relay braking. Just loses it on the apex, so nearly a mass crash between Winner, Wallen, Wood, and Brabham. You know, that was really close.
We'll take a look at the replay here. Looking at Vilde Wallen, who is in the top 10 of the championship, drives for 3 Crowns Racing, and just getting very deep into that last corner. Unfortunately, Eric Winter behind was able to check up in time. And in fact, Team Talent's Andrew Wood in that brown machine as well, getting on the stop pedal as quickly as possible. That battle has still broken up a little bit. Connie Naslund is having to fend off Rashad Craig. You see Andrew Wood now trying to make the move on Eric Winter. One thing that we noticed riding on board with Adam Blocker, though, Lorenzo, is that he had used none of his 10 push-to-passes, and we talk about that fuel game a little bit more. Well, you don't save fuel in the IndyCar when you use those 60 extra horsepower that you get 10 uses of. It adds a little bit more mixture into the fuel, rather into the engine, and you get that little bit more drive to try and make something happen.
Yeah, you consume more fuel when you use the push-to-pass, so you have to mindfully set the push-to-pass. And I think the only place you can actually use push-to-pass in this track safely might be the fourth footbridge after turn number 3, and then obviously the start-finish line when you have that long straight all the way down for turn number 11. I don't even think you'd use push-to-pass in the Ray Hall because it is so short. And then he comes up the corkscrew, and the corkscrew is basically a pinched up nearly a 90. Actually, it is a 90-degree left-hand to a right-hand turn. So it doesn't make sense for you to use a push-to-pass over there. So you need to be very mindful of where to place your push-to-passes, and then make sure the fuel consumption is actually going according to your game plan.
And Eric Winter is having some big issues, and Rashad Craig has had a big issue of his own off the track in turn 6. Fortunately, you can see, though, Lorenzo, the car appears to be fairly clean. He's going to wait to get that back on track, but we talk about the danger that is turn 6, and unfortunately, Rashad Craig got caught out there.
Yeah, looking at the replay, I just watching, he just clips he didn't even clips, he just entered way too wild. The car was already losing traction all the way down into turn number 7, and then you can see just safely rejoining where they wanted to go by, but those tires will take some time to degrade in terms of the sand and get the grip back.
Yeah, and at the same time, it wasn't just this driver getting caught out. Aaron Roof's getting caught out again. We'll take a look at this replay this time. It was down in towards turn number 1 once again. What has happened for Roofs has been an unfortunate one for him so far. Oh, and this time losing it very early, Lorenzo. Completely on his own, maybe just locking the brakes there.
Yeah, it's because there is a little bit of a dip into turn number 1. Especially if you go into that outside line, there is that concrete part of the track on the outside onto the entry of turn number 1 that you can actually try to abuse a little bit for the entry, like we were seeing with Adam Blocker. But the car just gets so light, and the braking just manages to kind of like offset your car, and eventually, if you do not have the proper entry to it, your car is definitely going to spin. And again, I'm just looking over here. Adam Crane just applying massive pressure once again into Ike. I just nearly had to take a middle line to try to defend Adam Crane for turn number 1. Very interesting battle over here for P3.
Well, we saw Andrew Wood, Ike's teammate, scrapping it out with Winter back for 15th place. Well, Andrew Wood in the Brown Team Talent machine has been able to make his way past. Now the red machine having to fend off Satellite Racing's Crane behind him as well. But we'll pull up just the top 8 standings on the bottom of your screen, Lorenzo. Take a look at the gap that Adam Blocker has managed to build up. Now, we're only 14 laps into this race. The gap's 11.5 seconds. He is the IndyCar Open Series champion, as I mentioned at the start of the broadcast, but nevertheless, an absolutely dominating performance to date so far.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like a reminder to everyone else. Even though I'm not in the championship contention, I am here, and I'm about to show you how to actually drive this car, because once again, he just did a 107 lap. Like, he's the only driver consistently putting those kind of laps into the whole field. And you were mentioning right brake footing. This is something that is, let me just say about this. We normally don't see in the real life people doing the right brake footing into the races. The only driver I know that did this in the IndyCar in real life might be Rubens Barrichello, when he actually did this in the 2010, maybe 2011 IndyCar championships. Not only he did that in Indy, he used to do that in F1 as well. And he had already caught up to traffic lap, yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing them go through traffic. That was Aaron Roofs getting a little bit wild, so not a strong race, unfortunately, for Roofs so far. Not affecting this battle for 3rd and 4th place just yet, but when I talk about right foot braking, I think you're right, Lorenzo, because it's not something we see at all nowadays in the real open wheel cars. The design of the cars is such that you have to use your right foot for one thing and your left foot for the other. But Adam has been racing as a right foot braker for a long time. Not anymore. He is now a left foot braker. He has been converted after switch.
School.
He's converted to a load cell based pedals, which, as you can imagine, Lorenzo, coming from the G27 pedals, he was a scary driver to compete against before, and now with that better equipment, it's even faster, and the gap now just continuing to extend out.
Yeah, as a G27 wheel driver, I have a load cell right now. I'm getting used to it. Yeah, I kind of you can feel how much comfortable you get under braking. It's a very huge upgrade, and well, it's no wonder he's putting those monster laps.
And like you say, the only driver able to break in is that 1:07 category right now. Hugo Olsen, almost his best lap, a 1:08.049. But every other driver in your field consistently in the 1:08 or 1:09s. And a blocker last time around, a 1:08.177. But I think it's fair to say he's catching the traffic now, Lorenzo, and that's going to be counting his lap times just a little bit. We'll jump on board with Blocker, though. If you take a look there at the 3rd number from the left-hand side on the steering wheel, the 10, that is the number of push-to-passes left remaining. So Blocker, to this point, still has not used any of those push-to-passes.
Yeah, perfect strategy as he goes into the first footbridge, into the Firestone Bridge. Now he's going to go into turn number 5, set up into the hill part of the track. There he goes, easy braking, then slide off the throttle, slightly off the throttle, easily into it, and then slide braking, turn into turn number 6. Use the maximum usage of that outside, use the curbing, outstanding maneuvers. And Adam, wow, that's precision driving right there. I really want to drive like Adam Blocker. I might ask for some teaching lessons.
Well, Blocker has been doing a few YouTube tips about setting up this Dallara IR18, which we would go and recommend. And of course, it's great to see the number of setup services that are not just providing setups, but also driving tutorials for many of these teams. You've got the VRS, you've got the PDS, you've got the Majors Series, you've got Setup Sans Frontières, which releases free setups on the service, on the iRacing forums, indeed. And What we missed is a little battle between Adam Crane and Andreas Eek, because Crane took a look to the outside around turn 1 last time, unable to make it stick, but continues to hold on here, and I wonder if at some point he's going to try and use the traffic to make something stick. As we see a driver actually down onto the pit lane. This is a very, very early stop. David Soranzo from 3rd place in the championship as well. He's missing part of his left front wing.
Yeah, I'm just going to take a look and see what happened to David Soranzo. David just having another one of those good starts and then just falling off the pack bit by bit. You know, he's one of these drivers that had a little bit of share of bad luck in these past 2 races. Had a good promising result at Barber, but just couldn't capitalize in it. And he has been going without a wing for the past 2 laps. And that's happened on lap 16, turn just before the Rahal straight, clipping the turtle curb on turn number 6 and managing to lose the left-hand side of his front wing.
And down all the way in 21st place. Now, we saw the replay coming through turn number 6. The stop, 8.2 seconds. So a standard stop there for David Soranzo. However, significantly compromises pit strategy now as compared to some of his championship rivals. So unfortunately for the Frenchman, not the result he was looking for. But as we jump back to the battle out front, Adam Crane getting around a little bit of lap traffic, and Lorenzo, look at the left front side of his wing as well. There it does appear to be a little bit of damage to Crane's front wing. That will be hurting him here, especially in the dirty air. You see him pushing just a little bit tight now in the dirty air behind Andreas Eek.
Yeah, that's one of the key aspects of Laguna Seca in comparison to, like, let's just say Barber. Those turtle curves, if you just go into the front wing, if you don't clip it properly with the wheel, with the tire in it, it won't be enough for you to get a slight damage on that front end side, on the front end wing. And then once you get that thing, it's really complicated for you to maintain pace. Matt props Adam Crane to still being able to put the major amount of pressure he's actually putting on Andreas Eek. But that has got to be real hard, especially like you said on dirty air, where the car will heavily understeer and you have to adjust on the fly your way of driving.
Yeah, he's going to have an uphill fight for the rest of this one. We'll see exactly what happens. Battles further back. It is Wildewallen who's back in the wall, coming out of the corkscrew. A big incident. Fortunately, once again, looks to have gotten away without too much damage. We'll get the replay up on your screen right now. A total of 10 seconds lost, and indeed all on their own. Just getting a little bit too greedy with the right foot and looping it around. The corkscrew really catching out quite a few drivers here today, Lorenzo.
Yeah, it's not surprising. The corkscrew eventually will claim a victim from time to time. Well, I expect to see more people being claimed by the corkscrew. We saw that at the very beginning of the race with Oliver Silva. So don't be surprised if we see more drivers making mistakes, even if it is by themselves on the corkscrew.
And we look back at 20th place because you can see David Soranzo, who's already up into 21st, as Adam Blocker puts in another fastest lap, a 107.230. He's still the only driver who's been able to break into the 107 barrier, and Lorenzo, his fastest lap right now, well, it's 8/10 quicker than anyone else on the track.
Is there anything to stop that man? Can we put a ton balance and make him competitive?
Well, it seems as though we might need some pretty drastic BOP in what is not a BOP series here.
Yeah, we need, jokes aside, of course, amazing driver from Blocker, just showcasing why he's probably one of the strongest drivers we know in the IR18, not just in the IR18, but the entire IndyCar class. We see him often in the Indy 500 broadcasts as well, usually fighting for wins. If I recall correctly, he even won a 500 a few years back. You can correct me on that. You know more about the Indy 500 than I do. So I know he's usually one of the guys that usually fight for those big results.
I'm sorry, Lorenzo, to interrupt you, but Adam Blocker with a 107.042 the last time around. So no one else is able to match him in the 107s. Well, Adam's saying, well, why don't I go and throw in a 106? And unfortunately, he might not like me saying this, but unfortunately for Blocker, he hasn't won the Indy 500 yet. He's won many of the IndyCar Open Road Series.
Oh, by the way, just to interrupt real quick, I just saw Andrew Kinsella just having a little bit of a being claimed as well by the corkscrew just about lap 21. So losing a few positions, but it's still be able to be in the pack and try to get a few places back.
Oh, and it's almost a mirror image of what we saw happen to Vildawala.
Yeah.
He was able to get it back under control, but once again, take a look here, Lorenzo. The front left side of that wing, a lot of these drivers seem to have that front wing damage. I wonder if a lot of them have hit those anti-cut curbs, which I was talking about in that lap guide at the start of the broadcast.
Yeah, I think it is very natural because you really want to attack as hard. But I think Laguna Seca for, I'm not just going to say Indy cars itself, but for any Formula cars, any open wheel cars, it's probably the only track you really don't want to abuse the corner entry, because those anti-curb, anti-cut curbs, sorry, I'm Brazilian, English is not my strongest suit. So it's going to be quite complicated for some of these drivers to maintain the car 100%. And of course, you're going to lose pace because look at Carlos Gomez-Otero, just being much stronger within draft there. I totally expect Kinsella to lose maybe that spot and one more to Coney Naslund.
And there in front, you see the 5 car just getting out of the way of, that's a lapped car. That's Hendrik Augustin. We saw him have a number of issues at the start of this one. So they're all having to navigate their way through the lap traffic, and it's bunching up some of these groups. We'll jump back up to 5th place on track because Team Heiskenveld Stefan Petrat, well, he's still being chased down by one of the championship contenders, Cesar Manzado. And Cesar is up in 6th place here, and he's in a fight with Andreas Eek, as we see, sorry, that's Stefan Petrat going off the course through the corkscrew. He gets a little bit loose, cuts the course, and Cesar Manzado is going to take full advantage. Stefan Petrat's going to get back into line. I'll grab a replay right now, but that was a big mistake. And in fact, here comes Stefan Petrat down onto the lane. Lap 23 completed. He's coming down a little bit early to cut that pit stop out, though.
Yeah, because if you look on the left-hand side, another driver with a slightly damaged wing. I don't know if that was on that corner specifically, but you can see clear as day that Manzado just makes the move easily without much effort from Petrat to actually try to hold that position in. He's going to go for tires, fuel, and maybe that wing repair, most definitely.
So off the jacks right now. I don't think he actually took any of that wing repair. I don't actually think, Lorenzo, he even had any wing repair needed, judging from that replay.
Yeah, it's weird looking on my screen then.
Sometimes just the peculiarities of online racing, but he did spend a little bit longer in the box than some of the other drivers that we've seen making their pit stops. The pit window is officially open now, and Adam Blocker, well, 24 laps completed. There he is. We talked about him maybe not doing some fuel saving, but with Andreas Eik now down onto the pit lane, I think it's clear to see some of these drivers have been saving, as Adam Crane also follows Eek in.
Yeah, Eakin, Crane, and the only driver who might be out. It is Manzado stays out. Hugo Olsen now takes the lead off this race from Adam Blocker, since Adam is still, I was going to say he's still in the pit lane, but he's not in the pit lane, so still a few places back. But if I recall correctly, they might be within the same strategy, so it is going to be that same relative 19 seconds gap between Blocker and Olsen.
Oh, and big drama here. Eek has had to take some damage repair, I think. He's still stationary in the box, 17 seconds right now. So the Team Talent driver, you can hear him revving his engine, and finally, 22.4 seconds later, able to get back underway. So that's a 44-second loss in the pit lane. Adam Crane is now well on his way, 12 seconds up the road, and Crane now released up into P number 3. He's got some clean track in front of him. He's got to get the hammer down on those cold tires.
Yeah, it's going to be quite complicated for the driver to try to get those cold tires in. Need to be cautious. And meanwhile, Blocker is into the pit lane. Rather a quick pit stop for Adam Blocker. He should be out anytime soon. So he's out 10.2 seconds for the leader of this race. Hugo Olsen is in. Cesare Manzado is in as well. Let's see if Andrew Gonzalo will follow suit.
And something I'm just thinking about here, Lorenzo, is we saw some of the drivers who stopped a few laps earlier spending a little bit shorter time in the box. So maybe Adam just having to fill a little bit more fuel. He went a few laps longer than some of them. Yeah. He's also hoping to go a little bit longer in this stint as well. Maybe some of these drivers doing, 8-second pit stops are almost resigned to the fact that they're going to be doing 3 stops in this race.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting. We were talking about that earlier. If you're able to save fuel enough, maybe 25, 26 laps, you would be in a really good range for just two quick stop, just for a two stopper. But if you go for 24, maybe 23 laps, you have to put up maybe a splash and dash at the end and just make do with 3 pit stops. I really am going to be interested to see how much of a time loss you get from that 3 stopper, even if it is a splash and dash itself, just a quick splash on that fuel, maybe just shoot a 3 seconds and then go out and just see how much relative time you're losing. Even though that turn number 1 and 2, if you're coming out at the same time as a competing driver, you still have a good chance to fight it out, because it is basically you're just coming within the same speed. That is getting really tricky for the driver that is on the track to make the overtake. Go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off, Lorenzo. There was an issue coming out of pit lane, I do believe, for Christopher Block. Let's take a look at the replay up on your screen. And in fact, it wasn't coming out of the pit exit. It was down into turn number 1, and he may have almost blocked the track there for one of the drivers who was coming out. That's one of the 3 Triple Crowns racing machines, and in fact, no, Block spins it all on his own, loops it. There comes the race leader, Adam Blocker, and that red machine is the one, in fact, that he just holds up a little bit. That's the 24 car of Daniela Talbert, I believe.
Yeah, that is the number 24 car of Daniela Talbert, and just narrowly avoiding the pit lane, because if he had gone into the pit lane exit, that he might have gotten a unsafe pit exit or any blind flags of the kind that we have probably incidents at the very last turn with Matthew Brabham.
It's all happening, and once again, your race leader comes up on the scene of the crash. We'll get a look at your replay right now, but Adam Blocker must be thinking, what am I doing wrong to get all of this bad luck right now? Well, he still got a 20-second gap to his teammate in second place, so maybe not that much bad luck, but once again going in a little bit too hot into that last corner, and fortunately able to do the 360 no-scope, get back underway in no time at all.
Yeah, no major time loss for Matthew Brabham. Actually, that was a quick reaction to no-scope. I give that 9 out of 10, in my opinion.
Well, we jump back now to the live picture with the battle for 4th place on track, because David Soranzo, after that early pit stop, he now needs to find some track position here, get out in front of both Stefan Petra and Cesar Manzado, and really, Lorenzo, pull a little bit of a gap, knowing he's got to do that one more pit stop.
Yeah, he needs to do that one more pit stop. That is going to be really interesting, because Manzado actually had the whole opportunity to get a good gap away from Stefan Petra on the exit of the pit lane, but the problem is, since he had the cold tires, he struggled so much in this turn, specifically to turn number 5 and number 5 and 6, just trying to get the brake out of the car properly and get that grip on. And then he nearly had a runoff at the corkscrew. He actually had to back the car basically mid-apex between the left-hand to right-hand turn, try to save that car into the track, and then that allowed the track to come closer and maybe, just apply a little bit of pressure in terms of gaps to the driver on the number 2 car.
And you mentioned cold tires. I cannot stress, Lorenzo, with the cold ambient temperature that we're seeing today, 19 degrees Celsius it was at the start of the race, that really, really means that those first almost 4 corners on your new tires are almost, I don't want to use they're very scary, let's put it that way. And I'm thinking back to last year. We talked a bit about the strategy and me winning that race using that 2-stop strategy. However, I almost lost the car on both of my pit exits coming through this very corner. Turn number 3, you get a little bit too greedy on the power, want to get straight back up to speed, and if you're not careful, you can lose the car in a very short order.
It's because those open wheel cars, they have so much torque. I think we don't give them enough credit for enough torque and respect them enough. It's because they have massive tons of downforce and grip itself. We think they're safe for you to, go aggressively on the braking, and they're going to be able to catch any slide that you have in terms of any wrongdoings that you might make. So we have to take a more of a cautious approach. Again, 2-3 laps, let that car sink in, let the tire build up a little bit. Just take more of a cautious line. You might have the time loss. Yeah, you might lose some time in comparison to your opponent if it is different strategies, but you're going to see how much that pays off when the tire starts to get warmer and warmer, and you get that additional grip just because the car is warm.
And if you look in the back of the shot, someone who's now got their tires up to temperature and pressure and looking to close in on this battle for 4th and 5th that we're seeing right now is Andrea Seek, that long stop. Well, he's still back in 7th place, and there's still the potential here, Lorenzo, for a good result because he sees these two drivers in front of them. Both of them are drivers that we talk about maybe needing to come down that one extra time. It's not over if you're the Team Talent driver.
If you're the Team Talent driver, you're basically sitting in a relatively good position because Bertrand has that 2-lap disadvantage in comparison to you, but then Soranzo unfortunately has more than 2 laps. He basically has a half a stint comparison to you, to Ike, so he just needs to keep that car on track, avoid any mistakes, because Soranzo has to come anytime into the pit lane the next 10 or 9 laps or so and make that pit stop. So just keeping your car on track will be enough for you to grab one spot, definitely. And just based on your pace alone, you might be able to close the gap to try to and then make the overtake.
And you mentioned that famous pass at the top of the hill down into the corkscrew with Alex Zanardi and Brian Herter. Well, Connie Naslund almost took a look to the inside as well, and that is one of the most iconic passes in all of motorsport,
nice
Lorenzo.
Save.
And a good save, like you say, from Connie Naslund as Andrew Wood now closes up as well. That move into the corkscrew, the last lap of the race to win that race indeed back in 1996. We talk about Alex Zanardi being such an inspiration in other ways, but that pass, and I watched it last night in preparation for this race, the guts and the bravery to really try that move and bounce yourself over the sand. It was a great pass and it really worked out for him. Connie Naslund getting a little bit close, but electing, maybe smartly, to back it off a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's the smart move, because one thing is real racing, there's no connection issues and things like that, and the famous net code issue that we like to talk about and try to avoid talk about over here on the broadcast. But I really want to actually open up a question to you, because you're more experienced than me. We were talking previous to the broadcast in the Indy cars. I just done the VCO Nations Cup in the IR18, and my experience resumes Indy. I referred to you, what is harder for you in Laguna Seca specifically? Get a good exit out of the corkscrew, or get a good exit out of the last corner like we're seeing with Connie Naslund?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I'm going to answer your question by not answering your question, because in my opinion, neither of those corners are the most difficult on this track. I talked to one of my teammates who competes in the SCCA Spec Miata around the Bay Area region as well, and I think we both have the same opinion. It's not the corkscrew that's the scariest. It's turn number 6 that we're about to come up to. You need to commit with everything you have on the entry here. And in the IndyCar, the entry speeds are just so high. And you need to be able to hit that apex curb perfectly. And unlike what Connie Naslund did right there, you need to get back onto the power in short order to power yourself up into the corkscrew. Now, the corkscrew is difficult, don't get me wrong, but it's not the corner that makes or breaks lap time. You can often lose 3 or 4 tenths of a second in turn number 6 if you're a little bit too cautious.
Yeah, fair game. I think that's a good answer. You know, whenever I drive Laguna Seca, it is a very hard corner, that turn number 6, because if you get the corner, I think appropriately, I think for the GT, whenever you drive GT cars in this track specifically, you can abuse more than the open wheeled cars. You know, abuse that curb, and the car will not offset too much. I think that's one of the things I really want to see now with this new suspension that iRacing has put in place for all cars, if I recall correctly, or the majority of the cars nowadays, that how the car behaves whenever you go for one of those curves. Does the car offsets? Can you actually use it and abuse it, depending on the setup? That's things I really want to see, not just in this championship, but moving forward with the other categories as well.
And that, of course, all ties in with not just the new damage model that we talked about earlier, but also the new tire model that's not yet come to the Dallara IR18. And speaking of Dallara, we can't sit here and talk about the Dallara IR18 in the iRacing service, Lorenzo, without acknowledging the amount of support that Dallara has really given to iRacing. It's not just this IndyCar where we got the car initially before it even debuted on track. We got the aero screen before it was even raced in anger as well. Like, that amount of collaboration cannot be understated. And then we talk about the brand new addition to the iRacing service, the Dallara P217 LMP2 car, a car that both you and I are very excited about.
Yeah, I'm excited about that car. I did drive a few laps in the IMSA and ILMS. I didn't do any officials in it though, It's a really interesting car. Unfortunately for the ILMS, they took away my dear beloved HPD Honda Performance Racing RX01, the car I dearly loved, the LMP2, the old one. But it is a very different car. You can use it so much, use it, abuse it. The braking in that car is amazing. The amount of details, the force feedback, especially for the less privileged wheels like the G27, for example, in comparison to a fan attack or a direct drive. The amount of feedback you get from that car is just tremendous. I really have to give major props for iRacing and Dallara to give those feedbacks and make sure the car is proper to drive.
And we're just taking a look at a replay down into turn number 1. David Soranzo took a look to the inside of Stefan Petrat, but getting a little bit squeezed there. Still committed to the corner. Contact was made, and driver sits in 3rd in the championship, is now up into 5th position. But Lorenzo, he might be feeling a little bit lucky that this is not a private league with private race stewards, because fortunately, he still might be able to get the result here today. In another league such as SCO, I suspect a penalty would have been incoming and back to the back of the field for the Frenchman.
Especially that Devotion is actually in SCO, so they drove an SCO last season. If I recall correctly, they are in SCO in this season as well. So if the team was in it, that would have been a definite stop-and-go penalty for causing a collision with another driver, especially when you're fighting for position. So unfortunately for David, I think he was a little bit overly aggressive, overly optimistic at the exit of turn number 2. Got pinched out, yes, that is that pinched down maneuver. But, you know, the movement was inevitable for a crash. Unfortunate for the other driver, but for Soranzo, luckily, no wind damage whatsoever in that car.
And Devotion, I don't know if they're confirmed for this upcoming SCO4 that's about to kick off in just a week's time. They did have 2 cars last year, Lorenzo, not just one.
Yeah.
They had 2 entries last year. We'll see what happens just in a week's time. I know you'll be on the call next Saturday for that. Very excited to kick it all off with the 12 hours of Monza, but we're now watching the battle on the edge of the top 10. Andrew Kinsella, who we saw have a slight issue, is now back up into the position where he started. He's chasing down the car in front, who's had a big off. That's a big crash. Oh my lord, Lorenzo.
And look at the front right damage on that car. Oh god. Let's try to get a replay and see what happened over here as all the drivers come into the very, oh my lord, that is very late braking and losing the car. I've never seen somebody actually do a barrel roll on the corkscrew like that. That is very weird looking, but luckily for the driver, it didn't get any other problematic damage on that car. But that was a very scary move, especially mid-apex.
And he's still trying to just manage that car. Hasn't come down the pit lane. You know what that reminds me of, Lorenzo? I don't remember the driver, but there was a crash last year at the IMSA round of the Laguna Seca race, and the Lamborghini Super Trofeo support race. There was a car that lost braking on the entry into the corkscrew and hard into the tire barrier that went, and the driver did sustain some fractures. Fortunately, has been able to recover, but that was a nasty crash. And you know, initially, it looked like Kinsella may have gotten into the back, but he lost that one very, very early indeed. Oh, sorry. Adam Crane. Adam Crane has had his own issues now. He's still in 3rd place, but let's take a look at this replay. Something has happened to Crane as he tried to make his way around a lapped car.
Yeah, he's just trying to go into turn number 1 into the lap car. Just, again, that braking issue that some of the drivers had, whenever you go deep into the braking, just locks it up. The car gets very light. There is some slight banking to turn number 1. I think that might have played into effect a little bit and then affected all the way down into mid-apex turn number 1 and 2. Luckily, no crash whatsoever between the lap driver and Adam Crane.
Lost the rear of the car under braking, able to gather it up. He did go over the anti-cut curb, but fortunately, I think Adam is going to get away with that. He's still in 3rd position. The gap to Cesar Manzado, 7.5 seconds. So Crane in a good spot. And we talk about the lap times now, Lorenzo. It's not just Adam Blocker who's managed to break into the 107s. He's consistently in the low 107s. Let's give him that for sure. However, Hugo Olsen, Adam Crane, Cesar Manzado, Andreas Eek as well, they've all managed to now put in lap times under that 108 barrier. The lap times starting to pick up here.
Yeah, lap times starting to pick up over here, but also one of the factors that is allowing to those times to be picked up is that the track temperature now decreased from those 37 degrees we saw at the start of the race. Now it is 35. Now back to 36. It is shifting between between 35 to 37. And Adam Blocker, I think, just had an issue with one of the back markers. I really was interested to see. It is right around turn number 1 into the start-finish line.
Let's see if we can get this replay up on your screen right now. It's all happening. We expected maybe a slightly interesting race, and there's the lapped car going a little bit wide through the rainy curve. Now down into the second last corner. Oh, and Adam Blocker almost gets forced off into the pit entry there. I do believe, Lorenzo, some contact was made, and I do believe there's some damage to the front wing there.
Yeah, I'm trying to look how bad that front wing damage it is on Adam Blocker's car. Looking at it from my perspective, it looks like the sides of the side drafts of the front wing are a little bit lifted up more than usual. Yeah, I don't know how it is for you, Arjuna, but that could affect the race of Adam Blocker way too much. I don't know how slow the car will be. We have to see for the next 2 or 3 laps to see the relative timing in comparison to Hugo Olsen.
So last time around with that issue, a 108.523 coming across the line once again. We'll see what the lap time is. There has been an incident further back, which will take a replay in just a few seconds. The lap time this time, a 108.283. There is definitely some lap time being lost here for Blocker. He is 15 laps into the stint, so about 10 laps to go, Lorenzo. Take a look, though, at the gap to Hugo Olsen. It's 25 seconds. I think Blocker doesn't have too much to worry about here.
I think he doesn't, but let's just try to look for the next few 2 to 3 laps to see if there's something for Adam to be worried about. It is a 108.282 for the number 1 driver. We have yet to see Hugo Olsen. He's just gone through the corkscrew, headed into the second to last turn to see how his lap will be, and then get a real comparison.
And well, we talked about that move into the corkscrew being a brave one because of the internet gods, Lorenzo, and unfortunately, they have bitten once again. John Downing for Sadie Sim Autosport took a look to the inside, running up the hill towards the corkscrew, and Eric Winter has been spun around. Here comes the aerial look. You can see Downing actually loses the car, trying to just slow it down in time. Winter tried to just cover the gap, and unfortunately, he lost a good 15 seconds or so, I do believe. That's an interesting one because in many ways, Winter was trying to cover a line that Downing was always trying to go for.
Yeah, and in my perspective, that could have been a race incident at any time of the day. You know, that is very, very, very interesting, that line taken by Winter, you know, and I don't think there was anything related in terms of touching the car. I think the car just lost grip mid-apex. The rear just got loose whatsoever, and allowed that spin to happen, not for Downing, but for Winter. So
lots and lots of action. Matthias Kraus.
And Arjuna?
Go ahead, what's up?
You know when we talked about the possibility of issues for Adam Blocker's car?
Oh no,
what's happened? He just did the fastest lap of the race again.
Oh my, okay, so Adam Blocker, we see him getting a little bit of damage to the front wing, well, as he rounds the last corner once again. Last time around, a 107.002, so knocking on the door of the 106s, and we may have hyped up that drama a little bit.
Oh, Hugo Olsen isn't.
Oh, that is Hugo Olsen around with damage to his front wing. One of the Three Crowns racing machines also getting by now. We'll take a look at the replay now. He does have a healthy 11-second buffer to Crane behind him, who is also dealing with his own damage, but there is John Downing, one of the other lapped cars. I'm going to see what happens here. Is Downing potentially getting involved again? And yes, he is. Oh, that is not what you need to see if you are competing for a championship. We'll take a look at an aerial replay here, but that looks like a little bit of a... I don't want to sound too critical as Hugo's teammate here, but when you see a lapped car, when you are a lapped car rather, I don't exactly understand what Downing is doing there.
Yeah, really weird. I think if I was Downing, I would have let off Hugo by any time he had opportunity on the Rahal straight, even before the turn itself happened. Now, what that occurred for Olsen, if you see that right wing, right front wing, it is fully bent. So I don't know how much time that will accrue in terms of time loss for Hugo Olsen. But the gap right now, Adam Crane, 5.6 seconds. That could change the entire look of the championship.
Well, Olsen needed the result here today. He's had some bad luck. It's not necessarily always been his fault, Lorenzo. When you go to tracks like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Oval, the famed Oval, things just happen, and sometimes you get unlucky. Then at Gateway, just a week later, again getting caught up in someone else's incident. That gap, though, 5.5 seconds, and we'll see what happens here, because both cars are dealing with quite a lot of damage. Hugo Olsen last time around, it looks as though that was a 108.496. Adam Crane just coming across the line now, 108.119. So 0.3 of a second being lost, and we'll have to hope here, or rather Hugo will have to hope, that he can get that speed back up. And about 7 laps away from the pit window, he needs to keep that gap 5 seconds or greater to make sure that if he changes the front wing, he comes out in front.
Yeah, and usually whenever they come down to pit lane, any damage to the wing is basically a wing change. So that can be done during mid-stop, but that is going to accrue maybe from 2 to 3 seconds additional in your pit stop time. If you go for a full pit stop service instead of just tires or a splash and dash. So it's going to be really interesting whenever Hugo comes to the pit lane. He has the fuel advantage in comparison to Adam Crane. Adam needs to come to 4 laps, whereas Hugo still has 6 laps onto his stint to come down the pit lane for maybe his final service.
And you know, I said it, Hugo has been leading so much of this championship. And just a few rounds ago, when we were wrapping up the oval portion of this calendar, he missed a few races over the summer, Lorenzo, and the standings that we showed to you at the start of the broadcast included the 3 drop weeks that all of these drivers are allowed. And one thing that Hugo has really been struggling with is the fact that 2 of his 3 drop weeks have been race weeks that he's had to miss. So unlike drivers like Crane and Soranzo, who have been able to make most of the races and use the drop weeks for the races where they struggle, like Soranzo has been struggling today, he has come down the pit lane, I do believe, for his second stop. So unlike some of the other drivers, Hugo doesn't have that luxury of being able to rely on prior race results to prop him up in the championship. He needed to get a good result here today, and second place over Crane in third would narrow the gap for sure, but definitely puts Crane in the driver's seat heading into the last race of the season.
Yeah, of course, it wouldn't be the most comfortable driver's seat for Crane, because it's still going to be under the pressure of losing the championship with just a solid good result from Olsen in the final round. But it still puts him into a comfortable position. You know, you're driving, you still have a little bit of pressure. And now I'm looking at Cesare Manzado. Nearly had an issue with the back marker. The same back markers is just about to overlap into turn number 1 and 2. He had to back away, nearly lost the front wing, and no, he actually lost a brake and nearly gets punted around by Andreas Ike going to turn number 2. And
Ike was coming in at a fast race of knots, able to just jink to that right-hand side. Just a reminder, by the way, live timing is available at timing71.org. Head over there. We'll grab the replay of what happened there with Manzado, and it was the issue with the lapped car. Here we see Andreas Ike just coming onto the scene of the incident, able to get back up into 4th place as a result, slowly making his own fight back. But here comes the look. Manzado was looking to the inside of the 19 Red X Yorka and just went maybe a little bit too aggressively for a gap that wasn't there. And sometimes that's what traffic management is about, Lorenzo, especially in these longer races. This is a 74-lap affair. It's often about knowing when to try and make the move happen.
Yeah, but the thing is, look at the problem for Sikora is that his left wing, that front wing is totally bent, so he's losing at least 2 to 3 seconds per lap. He just did a 110 in comparison to, just a quick look over here, 112 for Manzado. Of course, he had the issue, but Ike just still doing a 110 because of the issue, but they're doing in the average of 108. So 2 seconds per lap lost, and a driver that is not letting by, you know, he's a back marker, so if he has a clear wave around and let the leaders go by, he should have let them even the previous lap, but he's kind of trying to fight for the gap, not trying to lose a lot of time for the other competitors.
And now he's proving to be a little bit of a cork in the bottle for Eek as well, so we'll see what happens there. Does get out of the way on the run up the Rahal straight, but take a look. The left-hand side of your screen, that is what Adam Blocker has been able to do so far. He's lapped the entire field, Lorenzo, up to 8th position right now. And I would wager everyone up, maybe even to Ike as well, in danger of being lapped come the end of this race.
And there's a good chance the only driver who's actually on the lead lap, the latest one is Heinrich Lindhoff, 1 minute and 4 in comparison to Adam Blocker. So Adam, you can see just right behind him into the last turn. So Lindhoff will lose position. Petrad just lost position because he's on the pit lane doing his pit service. If I'm going to be honest, I think he might lap up to P4, and I can maybe Crane if Crane doesn't pay attention.
I think the battle to keep an eye on right now, though there are battles throughout the field for sure, Lorenzo, but the story of this race, the story of the season in many ways, is this battle between Hugo Olsen and Adam Crane. The gap back up to 5.2 seconds. Olsen is not sitting down. You're getting very loose on the exit of the last corner. He's really pushing that car all the way to the limit now, knowing he needs that 5-second buffer in that last pit stop.
He needs that to come down anytime soon. The problem is Hugo just put a monster lap on the previous one. I was going to say the previous one, that was lap number 47. That was a 108.096. Even with that slightly damaged wing for the number 8 driver, and Adam Crane just got lost with traffic on the last turn on the previous lap. That what allowed him to lose a little bit of time in comparison to Olsen. But he needs to work, and he needs to work hard to make that gap to be at least 4, maybe 3.5 seconds when they come down into the lane.
The final pit window of the race is actually open now. So 25 laps to go as Adam Blocker crosses the line to complete 49 out of the 74 laps we are going to see here today. We ride on board with Satellite Racing's Crane, getting a little bit of a lockup on the left front in the braking zone of the corkscrew now through the rainy curve down into the second to last corner. One thing that I've noticed, Lorenzo, as we see Crane diving down onto pit lane, it's a very tricky pit lane. You'll see the lock all the way to the left-hand side, and the pit alarm goes off as well in the background. But one thing you'll notice, you take a look at that number 3 boxes from the left-hand side, we are not getting accurate push-to-pass data here anymore in the iRacing simulator, and as a result, we have no way of knowing how many push-to-passes some of these drivers have saved up for the last portion of the race.
It's going to be really interesting since we don't have that information anymore. Of course, on my telemetry, it says 10 for everybody. I think for you as well. Even on the live timing as well, shows 10 for everybody. Unfortunately, this is one of the tracks that I really don't see push to pass being overly effective, unless it is turn number 1 and then turn number 5 and 6. It is really complicated for you to get that draft. And again, one of the things that usually plays off in this track is Portuguese, again, Brazilian, English, is the dirty air that you try to get a good run and you simply don't have it just because of that dirty air.
And Adam Blocker out of the pit lane for the final time. He's passed Stefan Petrat there in the background. He's got that comfortable lead, but we now follow the battle that we all care about. Take a look, bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You'll see the 7 machine of Adam Crane working his way through Rainy Curve right now. We watch Hugo Olsen up on the jacks. Is he going to take that front wing repair? You'll see the right-hand side of that front wing get a little bit of damage repaired. There you go. Damage has been repaired as Crane comes around the last corner. I do believe Olsen is going to have a gap here. He's got everything in his control now. He's now just got to keep it clean on the cold tires, and he should be able to secure the second place.
And meanwhile, there's a really good battle brewing over here. 9P9 between Stefan Petrat and Hendrik Lindhoff, as Petrat is trying to hold off Lindhoff, who just recently came out of the pits. And I was looking real hard to try to get that place from the Team Hoisenfeld driver.
puts the pressure on, doesn't get the greatest drive off the last corner. Unfortunately, though, as we see another car, that's Andrew Kinsella coming out of the pit lane. And guess what? He's going to join this battle. So it's now going to be a 3-car fight. Kinsella on the cold tires, Petrat to the inside, and Petrat's going to take P number 7 as now Kinsella gets very loose off the corner, and now Lindoff takes a look, but Kinsella now able to gather under control. He's going to be able to hold on to the position here through turn number 5, and I think the 3-way battle is going to be one to watch. Kinsella still trying to get those tires up to temperature as Petrat tries to pull away.
And this is one of the things I really want to also get your brains in. How defensive should you get, especially if you're coming out of the pit lane, you're getting under the pressure of losing one position, and your tire's still not up to temperature. Excuse me. And how aggressive should you be in terms of defense in comparison to the other driver who actually has worn tires and can be faster than you? How aggressive should you be? How aggressive should your defense be?
I think we saw Kinsella play that perfectly. Now, he could have tried to cut to the inside of turn number 3 and, maybe tried to block Petrat, but, unfortunately, Lorenzo, on those cold tires, you just set yourself up to potentially lose the rear end of the car and maybe even lose more position. So Kinsella slotted into the middle of this train, now in 8th position. He struggled throughout this race, qualified in 10th, so still up 2 places, never mind the struggles that he's had. He's now got to just look ahead to these last 20 or so laps to see what he's going to be able to do. He's got a clean car once again, the potential to now try and pass the High-Skinwell drivers. Now, these are the first cars a lap down, just remember, as it stands, so they don't have to worry about any of the leaders coming up to lap them once again. Oh, and that's Lindoff in the background. He's off. Sorry, Lorenzo. We were just talking about a 3-way fight potentially brewing. Well, Hendrik Lindoff off the course in turn number 6 and all on his own. Gets a little bit of a bump going through the kink, just trying to use the curb as much as possible. Overcorrects that car into the outside wall, and unfortunately for Lindoff, back into 9th place now and going to lose a lot more time to the cars behind.
Yeah, because of that front wing damage. Once again, that's how aggressive he should be. Yeah, and he comes into the pit lane. He's going to get that front end repair. Maybe try to get a safety fuel in as well, because you're going to have to repair that wing. So why not put a little bit of fuel in and try to play it safe? But yeah, unfortunate for Henrik Lindoff. But that's how we be talking about that anti-cut curb. How aggressive should you take it? No, actually misses up a little bit of the pit lane. Had to back off, losing I'm not going to say major time, maybe 3 to 4 tenths of a second.
And we talk about there being battles up and down your field. Just because Adam Blocker has run away with this one doesn't mean further back they are fighting. Andrew Wood in 10th place right now, edge of the top 10, recovering from a very disappointing qualifying performance. You see Matthias Kraus and Connie Nasland right behind him. So the battle between 10th, 11th, and 12th is brewing here. We've obviously got Kinsella and Petrat up in 7th place. Then you've got other drivers, the 17 and 18 machines, scrapping it out for 13th and 14th and up and down the field. Let's just take a look back, though, very quickly at your leader, because he's now lapping Cesar Manzado. So this is going to be everybody up to 6th place with Andreas Eek in front as well. So we're about to see everyone, including the 5th place driver, being lapped here. It's really been a very dominating performance from Blocker, and we saw him have an issue, Lorenzo, but I think this goes to show that, Blocker, he's won. I'm just going to take a look at my notes if you give me a second here, Lorenzo, but
sure.
He's won since the beginning of this IR18 era. So we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We've had 10 championships in the Indy Open Road. Blocker has won 5 of them. Let's just put that into perspective. Blocker's won 6 of the 10, actually, including the one last year. And his teammate
Henry... had a good track. You just had to say it first, but he just had a good track.
I just had to big him up a little bit, and he's going to take a little bit of a slowdown penalty there, but he's won 6 out of 10 championships. And Lorenzo, his teammate Henry Bennett, has won 3 of the other 4. For Powerslide Motorsports, it's been a very dominating era in this IR18. They haven't managed to get it done at the Indy 500 just yet, but Blocker's showing us just the speed that Powerslide Motorsports can bring to any IndyCar race.
Yeah, especially with that duo of Blocker and Bennett. Normally, Bennett is one of those guys, usually who front runs, if I recall correctly, was one of the front runners for the last year's Indy race, the Indy 500 race. Didn't win, if I recall correctly, but he's one of the strongest guys I know also from my 500 days that unfortunately is not featured over here, but a very strong driver nevertheless. I see him running often in the fixed series. But all power slide. Oh, you should feel happy about your team, hey Arjuna. Well, very strong team. I wonder who actually won the last championship. Do you have that data?
Yeah, so it was Blocker who won the last year's Open Series on the IndyCar side, and Henry Bennett, his teammate, captured the fixed title. I think the first time a team has ever swept those two series in the same season. We are looking, though, at David Sorrenza, who has come down into the pit lane for his third and final stop. You'll see it's a fairly lengthy one there. 9 seconds in the box. He slotted into 8th position, Lorenzo, which is about where we've seen him running for much of the race, and unfortunately qualified up in 5th place. We didn't see him make the brave start that Adam Crane did, but for Sorrenzo, this might be the race that he looks back on and just reflects on how he maybe lost the chance to try and fight for the championship here in the next race.
Yeah, I think this is the race of what could have been for Sorrenzo. You know, he had that opportunity up to even P5 at one point. We saw that even though he had that touch, if I recall correctly, with either Petrado or Manzato, if I recall correctly, and got away with it, and unfortunately had a string of issues mid-race and then pulled back into P8 eventually. Of course, that issue at the very start of the race is what affected him the most. He just did a split stop, second lap into his 10. It's for Sorrenzo, there still will be a shot, but it's that kind of long shot. He needs to do good next week to the races prior to the top split. But you know, he has a chance, but he needs to wish upon a star, and everything has to work out on his part.
We jump back to the battle between 6th and 7th place. Kinsella looking to try and find a way around Petrat at this point. And Lorenzo, you touched on the weather. It's been slowly cooling off, and you can see how much darker it is now compared to when we started the race. Well, the track temperature in iRacing now 33 degrees Celsius. It's dropped by almost 5 degrees throughout the race, and I'm wondering if we're going to see Adam Blocker once he manages to navigate his way around the lap traffic he's dealing with now, lapping Andreas Eek for 4th place. So everyone other than the podium is now 1 lap down. I wonder if we're going to see a sub 1 minute 7 lap time.
Maybe in the final laps. Who knows? The thing is, if we have the track map, I don't know if you have the track map over here, Arjuna. This is more evident than any of the other races we had in the roadside. That since we have 25 cars, we had 25 cars up in the field. I don't know if Aaron Rivers, you can see right over there on the bottom right of your screen how bunched up this field is right now. We still have about 24, 23 cars still running in the field, much more than Barber itself. So it is harder for you to get that clean lap. He nearly had an issue with the back marker. Once again, just try to take a look at it. I think that's the number nine out of John Downey. But it will be complicated. It is doable, but he needs a full clean run for him to actually get that 106 lap.
Yeah, and he's got Vilde Wallen in front of him, and then Hendrik Lindhoff and Christopher Block. So only 3 more cars to lap Lorenzo, and he will have a perfectly clear track. You can see the one car making his way up in toward the corkscrew at the top of the map. The 15, 4, and 18 are the cars in front of him. We continue to watch this battle between 6th and 7th. Kinsella looks to have a little bit more pace, I would say here, Lorenzo, but it's such a difficult track to try and make something happen that he's really just unable to get close enough out of that final corner to make the move stick.
Yeah, again, dirty airplane effect over here, because you really want to try to get yourself as close as possible. You can see the lines for Kinsella. I think the braking for Kinsella is what is working very well for him. Just the exit out of the turn is what favoring him. Petrata maybe might be set up differences between Petrata and Kinsella as they come to turn number 1. The line for Kinsella just way wide in turn number 1, just using that concrete patch just as he goes into the entry, 4 wheels into it, and then just sets himself up for late apex, and then set himself for mid-late apex on turn number 2. Really interesting lines. You can see how the drivers take these lines, because the Laguna Seca is one of those tracks you can play with the lines a little bit and get away with it.
And it's such a fabulous track, Lorenzo. No matter what some people might say about the racing here, you know, I'm so glad to have the IndyCars back. And, you know, unfortunately the race this year had to be canceled due to, you know, all the situation happening around the world.
Yeah.
But last year it was a fantastic race. Colton Herta getting the win, and I'm excited to finally come back next year and actually be able to see these Indy cars in person.
Unfortunately, the race... Oh, something happened to Adam Blocker. Just checking on the chat over here. I have the chat enabled. And he just had an issue. I think one of the drivers, I think that might be Oliver Silva, just going off track. And that might scare the Adam Blocker a little bit. But he just made the overtake on Adam Andres Ike. Just the top three is now on the lead lap.
Yeah, there you can see that incident. I believe that was Vilda Wallen who went off the track, though, one of the Three Crowns racing machines that we've been graced with here on the iRacing Esports Network. Adam Blocker, you see that wide line down in towards turn number 1, and very interesting to see some drivers not using all the track width. Continue to watch Blocker, though, as he dives down the corkscrew just under 14 laps to go, 13 laps the last time across the stripe, and no real danger, I would say, of Blocker catching up to Crane and putting any of them in lap danger. So now he's got some clean air in front of him. Let's see if that 106 lap time is really doable. We're not sure, obviously, about the push to pass considerations, how many he has left. And one thing that I was talking about to some drivers earlier in the season, Lorenzo, going back all the way to our early broadcasts in this IndyCar iRacing series, that some of these drivers save their push to passes to the end and then don't use them. They realize that they need to be a little bit smart at the end of this race, but Adam Blocker with a 40-second gap, I'm really hoping we see that 1 minute 6 lap time.
Yeah, he just go for full party mode and then decides to go for that 106 lap. If he has the fuel, of course, he actually put the right amount of fuel, which I think he does. You know, you probably know this more better than I do. You put the right amount of fuel and he should be all set for a really good fast last qualified laps into the final laps of this race. We still have about 13 laps left into this race, so he has time, and now he's got a pretty much clear field for him to make the moves.
I tell you what, it's been 62 very entertaining laps. There are still fights happening up and down your field. Let's take a look at a lap on board with your current race leader, Adam Blocker, as he crosses the start-finish line. So 1 lap on board. Last time out was a 107.062. This time he does it. Breaks into the 106s with a 106.985. And Lorenzo, I'm glad that we jumped on board for that lap, because what a smooth lap it was.
Yeah, that was a really smooth lap. You know, the braking on that car he just done is something out of this world. You know, it takes, I would say, first perseverance and second technique for you to be right for braking and still be effective in terms of lapping the car, you know, just being clean and efficient and getting the right amount of power out of the turns, the clean air as well. Now he has a number 18 car just right ahead of him. That's Christopher Block into the corkscrew. But again, the line on Adam Blocker's car, that's just a perfect showcase of how to drive the IR18 into his maximum limit, playing inefficiently in an iRacing.
And this battle for 6th and 7th is really heating up. You saw Kinsella get a great run out of turn number 6. Looked to the inside of the corkscrew, thought a little bit better of it with still over 10 laps to go, but They're catching a train of lapped cars in front of them. This might be the opportunity for the Canadian to try and make the move stick on the Team Heiskeveld driver in front. Across the line we go. So 10 laps to go officially at this point. Kinsella just backs off down into turn number 1, runs his very wide line. This is one of the fights to keep an eye on. While the other one is Cesar Manzado, who's managed to close back up to Andreas Eek in front of him now. And Eek in 4th place wants to hold on here because this is valuable points. Cesar Manzado comes into this one in 4th place of the championship with Andreas Eek just 10 points behind. And we go into this race with 2 races to go, and this is where we talk about David Soranzo not setting himself up strongly for the last week of the season. This is where if you're Andreas Eek, you've made the mistake once. Lorenzo had to spend a long time in the pit lane that first pit cycle. You need to hold on to the position here as they catch one of the lapped cars in front of them.
Yeah, and again, that might have benefited Manzado a little bit to close down the gap and just go for a good braking line. But well, they're both cleared off just before the final turn, and I was just looking at the very.
Sorry, Lorenzo. Sorry to cut you off. Petrat down onto pit lane. There you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, Stefan Petrat has had to come down the lane once again. So we talked about some drivers needing to make 3 pit stops here. And I do believe Petrat is going to slip all the way back to maybe even 11th place on track. We'll stay with him for just a few minutes to see, but that was a shame, Lorenzo. That was proving to be a really, really fun fight.
Yeah, that was, and he goes for tires, fuel, and also repairing the wing. That front right, that had a little bit of damage on the Team Hoistingville number 6 car. Is going to go out, but that is going to be quite of a lengthy pit lane. 18, 19 seconds. So there's something else more than just the wing to be damaged on that Team Hoistingville car. Being thrown back all the way down into P11. Not even close to the top 10.
What may have happened there, Lorenzo, is you get a little bit of damage to that rear end diffuser, rather. Just get a little bit of contact maybe on the what would be a rain light in the F1. I don't know if it's the same here in the IndyCar, but that is often a mandatory 15-second hold to repair that damage. It's unfortunate for Petrat because he's now 15 seconds behind Connie Nasland in front of him, so he might have had a chance there of coming out in 10th place, but the Team Heiskeveld machine going to finish this race down in 11th, not where he would have wanted to be.
Yeah, unfortunate for the driver, and now he's one of those drivers that could have set himself up to have a good race, you know, getting a few spots into the standings coming into the final round. Now he's just about 13 seconds away from Connie Nasland. If he really wanted to go into the top 10, he needs to be at least 1.5, 1.2, 1.3 seconds faster per lap than Nasland. But I don't think that's enough, even because Nasland is kind of keeping it clean, 109s, 110s, depending on circumstances. He can actually make it and be that last guy into the top 10. Now, we don't have a lot of battles up in the field. I think the only ones we are seeing is Cesare Manzado and just Ake. And the further back in the field is John Downey and Bill Ballard.
Yep, just those 2 battles currently happening, but this one is for 4th place on track, and it is the one between 2 championships contenders, so we're going to stick here with them. Eek getting a little bit loose there, coming on through the initial left-hand apex, able to gather it up through the second portion of the corner. The gap up to 0.8 of a second, and I have a feeling here that Eek has just enough to hold on. Manzado has managed to close back this gap up, but never really, Lorenzo, being a strong contender, I would say. Unlike Adam Crane, who we saw make that really, really bold move into turn 1 on that first lap of the race, Manzado was a little bit more reserved this entire race, and I think very content to take his points and go into that last race of the series at the Brickyard.
Yeah, and that Brickyard is going to be a very interesting race. You know, it isn't the oval, it is the road course. And it isn't the most up-to-date road course, unfortunately. Where I think it would provide a very interesting race because that layout plays out into more of a downforce and car placement strategy. It isn't tire consuming as much. It's more fuel consuming because you're basically off the throttle for the good majority of the race. You're basically pedal to the metal a good portion of this race. I think there is, I would say, maybe 3 real big braking points. So it is a really interesting scenario. You're using the old layout, the 2007 layout, where it is more technical You need to mind the acceleration. The tires will actually come into effect over here. So for Adam Crane, you're putting yourself in a good position. Just need, I would say, probably a podium finish, maybe P3 or P2 to clinch the championship.
And obviously the points are always given out based on strength of field, so we cannot say what the points difference is going to be at this stage. Obviously, Lorenzo, we have to wait for those race results to become finalized, and the gap 31 points coming into this, second and third, again, does put Crane in that very, very strong position. He has managed to close the gap up to Olsen a little bit. It's now 4 seconds, but we're riding on board with the front nose of Cesar Manzado, who has closed a little bit more up to Andreas Eek in front of them. We're obviously not 100% aware of the push-to-pass situation, but it is the number 2 machine. That means the second strongest driver in terms of I rating across the entire field, and the only driver stronger than him is Adam Blocker, so Cesar Manzado might be pretty happy to be back here in 5th place given some of the struggles he's had, but it's not over yet. 5 laps to go, still putting on the pressure. It is Adam Blocker out front now, who's once again got clean air, and it wasn't the last lap, but the lap before put in another fastest lap, breaking into the 106s once again, a 106.929. The gap to Hugo Olsen, now 50 seconds, so I think one of the viewers in our YouTube chat earlier, Lorenzo, had said that Adam is going to get out to a pit stop lead. Well, he's done that rather comfortably. He could come down for a full service and still have a 20-second gap if he wanted to.
I would say he can come down for a service, have a coffee, bathroom break real quick, just stretch it out right before he goes into the car, and he still would have enough time to actually make it into P1.
He would, and as we watch them one more time around the last quarter, Adam Blocker with a 106.875. So I talked about maybe him being a little bit smart and trying to back off to preserve the race win. None of that is happening for the driver who now lives up in Detroit. He's moved to the Motor City and taking some inspiration, I would say, from the influences around him.
Yeah, I think the Motor City, of course, gets into that feeling once in a while for some of those drivers. You know, you are in the capital city of, you know, motoring in the world. You know, you have Ford, you have all the other big brands of the American automobile industry in there as well. And I was just looking at Manzado just going off into the to that runoff area and turn number 5 all the way down to the Ray Hall Straight. That could have been really scary. But yeah, I would be a little bit excited. You know, you go into a city that has so much history and, you know, get those motory feelings and increase my I rating.
Well, the only thing that is still left for Blocker to achieve in the official side of the IndyCar competition on the iRacing.com service is that Indy 500. He came close last year. It was a photo finish across the line. This year, not getting the same amount of success, struggling a little bit more with the fuel strategy, but we are delighted to be able to announce here that the Open Wheels 500 is going to return for a second year. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Open Wheels 500, often referred to as the Tanner 500, it was an event put on last year by OpenWheels.com that truly replicates the entire Indy 500 experience. It's a 2-day qualifying with a proper bump situation, lots and lots of pressure on your qualifying effort, and then the 3-wide start that leads to 200 laps of racing action. Delighted to be able to announce that November 15th, the 2020 edition of the race returns, and Powerslide Motorsports, I'm sure, as well as the entire rest of the IndyCar community, is looking to that date to try and secure an Indy 500 win.
Yeah, absolutely. I talked with some of the Brazilian guys, Nato and Marco Aurelio, Brazil, and they say it is also known by community. I think even though it is just the second event, I think many people call it the real 500. You know, of course, we have the iRacing 500, the official event, but they call it the real 500 because of the prize and the high level of driving effort the drivers put in qualifying and also into the racing strategies and racing setups and qualifying setups and the atmosphere you get into that event. So really good to see the second edition of the Open Wheels 500. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be broadcasting. I'm not going to be one of the commentators. Futurely, I would like to do this, but I still need to flex on my skills a little bit more on the oval side.
Well, he did
because the Nations Cup doesn't count.
I was going to say, you did compete in that VCO Cup of Nations. Unfortunately, not maybe the best experience as Andreas Seid gets a little bit loose off into the grass, and with 2 laps to go, the action is really heating up. The next time they cross the stripe, it will be the white flag. Adam Blocker has already taken that. Cesar Manzado has to try and seize the opportunity, though. He's a little bit further behind than he would have liked to be as they exit the last corner. This will be one of the prime overtaking spots. You can see him get a very good drive off the corner. Eek's going to block all the way to the inside now, across the stripe, up the hill, now down in towards turn number 1. Manzato looks to the inside at the Andretti hairpin, not able to get close enough to get alongside. He's going to have to hold back here, and this is a fight to watch. Eek has it in control. He's just got to keep it in a little bit more of an orderly fashion. He's got the gap. He's been able to hold off the driver behind for so long, but we jump forward further up in your field. It is Adam Blocker down through the corkscrew for the 74th and final time. Those 18 meters of elevation drop lead down into this double left rainy curve, and 2 corners is what separates the power slide driver from a victory. It's been a dominating one. He led from lights to flag, didn't even lose it in any of the pit cycles, and the fastest lap of the race, a 106.875 for Adam Blocker. It is a win here in the IndyCar iRacing Series, and he takes home the checkered flag. What a fantastic performance there.
Yeah, fantastic performance by Adam Blocker, and Hugo Olsen will finish in P2, Adam Crane in 3rd, and I just managed to save by the thread of hit. Apologies. That P number 4, because Manzado on the exit of the corkscrew just got the car a little bit loose. He had to save it and let off the gas a little bit. That's why opened up the gap to about a half a second between Ake and Manzado into the final sequences of the Laguna Seca track. But amazing actions and amazing scenes over here in the Californian track over here, Arjuna.
It was absolutely incredible. And you know the best part there, Lorenzo? Well, we talk about Adam maybe preserving the win. No, he decided on that last lap of the race, it was the lap that he was going to do his fastest lap. There you can see a 106.816, and hopefully we'll get to talk to him in just a few minutes. We're still waiting for the last cars to come across the line to be able to show you the final results. But 74 laps here, Lorenzo. We did talk about it maybe being a little bit of a less exciting race, if you would say that, given that it's hard to overtake here, but we really were treated to some fun racing here today.
Yeah, we were given a great package over here in this race. You know, good qualifying. The field was actually very stacked at the very first laps. Unfortunately, again, this track taking no prisoners whatsoever. And now you can see Adam Blocker doing the zeros, lacking the skills of doing those burnouts a little bit. But yeah, we were given great action from start to finish. You know, just Adam Blocker in the league of his own. Hugo Olsen and Adam Crane gap battle from one another, and the damages they had throughout the race, of course, inflicted a little bit of these histories we had throughout this race. And some of the other drivers, you know, just keep the car on track. And I really am interested to see how the final round will shape up, because again, Indianapolis Roto, the Roval, you have some overtaking opportunities, especially in that final sector where you come into the oval part. You know, lots of things can be played out on that on that track, and the championship is still open for anyone.
It is still wide open. Let's take a look at the race results. It was a 1-2 for Powerslide Motorsports, with Adam Blocker taking the win by a mammoth 54 seconds from his teammate, the Swede Hugo Olsen, who is going to close the gap to his championship contender, Adam Crane, by just a little bit. Crane, the last podium finisher and also the last driver on the lead lap, just showing the domination that Blocker had. The rest of your order, it was Andreas Eek who got the position over Cesar Manzado. Andrew Kinsella in 6th place, with David Soranzo able to make a recovery after that initial crash that made him dive onto pit lane early, up into 7th. Andrew with a very strong drive once again from the rear of your field. Connie Naslin, Carlos Dotero, the edge of your top 10. And then we look through the rest of your finishers. Stefan Petrat, Christopher Block, Vilda Wallen, John Downing, then Matthias Kraus, Hendrik Lindhoff, Lester Hirokak, Matthew Brabham, Eric Winter, Radex Yorka, and then the last 6 finishers, Hendrik Augustin, Oliver Silva, Justin Petschauer, and then 3 drivers who didn't make the end of the race here today: Daniela Talbert, Aaron Roofs, and Richard Craig. We're going to take a short break here live on the iRacing Esports Network. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with post-race coverage from the Raceway Laguna Seca. Well, after 74 laps here at the WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, it is Adam Blocker who takes home a dominating finish from lights to flag victory. Wins by 54 seconds from his teammate Hugo Olsen and Lorenzo. Your first race here in the IndyCar iRacing Series as a broadcaster. We were talking about it maybe being a little bit less exciting and less passing, but like we were just talking about in that little break right there, a very, very intriguing race. And personally, I cannot wait for that season finale at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Yeah, I cannot wait as well for Indianapolis. This race was very cool, and in my opinion, I think it would be more locked up in comparison to what we saw in Barber. In Barber, of course, lesser people on the grid, 18 cars on the grid, and we thought, all right, this is going to be a little bit more bunched up, gap racing in comparison to this one. And this one would be more of someone running off, and there wouldn't be any major battles. That was quite the contrary. We saw a lot of battles from start to finish, mid-pack, front of the pack. Of course, Adam Blocker on a league of his own, just opening up, nearly lapping the entire field. Only the top 3 drivers in the lead lap. And it's going to be really interesting coming down to Indianapolis Roval. It is a track that favors a lot of the overtakes. You can use and abuse the push to pass, and I think fuel consumption and tire consumption will be more than key, more than so than Laguna Seca itself.
Well, I think we are setting ourselves up for a fantastic finale to the season, but it's time to bring in today's winner, Adam Blocker. And Adam, that was a dominating victory from lights to flag. You got pole position by just a 1/10 of a second, but never really in any danger. You set sails very, very early. What was it like when you really didn't have much to do other than run your own race and keep your pace up?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I messed up a little bit in qualifying. First lap, I was on for a little bit better lap and just gotten off track at the last corner, and then did a safe lap, my second lap. And then, yeah, I mean, it could have been a boring race if there wasn't all the lap traffic, but there were so many cars on the track, I barely got any clean laps aside from the beginning of the race. Seemed like every lap I was either about to lap someone or in the middle of people trying to let me by, or not trying to let me by. So, yeah, it was definitely interesting all the way through.
Well, you talk about it being a little bit less, more congested later in the race. You did put in a series of really, really fast laps at the end. The only driver to break into that 1:06 barrier. And what is it about Laguna? We watched an onboard lap with you on one of your fastest laps in that 1:06 barrier, and it just looked like a very smooth lap, very under control. But this is such a fast track. What does it take to be fast at a track like this?
I don't know. I tend to fare better at the tracks that are a little bit higher speed, where you can set the car up to be a little bit stiffer. For some reason, I just like the car to be more responsive. And yeah, I think for one, we had a really good setup for this track. As you can see, I mean, Hugo P2 and Andrew P6 with very little practice. So, very good overall. But yeah, I don't know, just something about it. I think the main thing is this track, you really have to commit a lot to get the lap time in several corners, like the kink onto the back straight, the corkscrew, and the corner after the corkscrew, I don't know what's called. And then even turns 1 and 2, you have to really commit. There's also several corners where you can take different lines, so you just have to be good at adapting. Like if you miss the line slightly, you can still gain most of the lap time back if you adjust your line mid-corner. So there's a lot of things that make Laguna unique. It's also pretty slick because sand normally gets kicked up on the track, as you probably saw. So several of the corners have sand all over the apex.
Well, one final question, Adam. Obviously, you won the IndyCar Open Road Series the last season. We're not going to see you the last race of the season from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So let's ask you about the future and the Open Wheels 500. It was announced that's coming back for 2020, November 15th race day. I assume you're very excited. You've come very close to winning an iRacing Indy 500, but I know that we were talking about it on the broadcast as well. Winning the Open Wheels 500 is really a special moment. How excited are you for the return of the race? And I know you've already started your prep for the race as well. How much work are you expecting to need to put in over the next 6 weeks?
Yeah, definitely very excited. Tanner puts on a great event. Probably one of the best events, if not the best event on iRacing. So really looking forward to it. Yeah, P5 last year, I think that we had a good setup last year, but our setup mainly in qualifying, but also in the race was lacking in May. So I'm sure me, Henry, and Andrew will be putting in a lot of work over the next couple of months to try to catch up, really. And as long as our setup is close enough, if we have a chance to win, I'll be happy. You always need some luck at Indy to actually win. So.
Well, congrats, Adam, on a very good result here, and we'll see you in a few weeks' time then for the Open Wheels 500.
Yep, see you then.
that was the race winner, Adam Blocker, and Lorenzo Bonder is standing by with the second place finisher, Hugo Olsen.
I got it over here, Hugo Olsen. Hugo, well, that was a really interesting race from your perspective. Qualifying you are very close in comparison to Adam Blocker, nearly 1/10 of a second. Then unfortunately for the remainder of the race, he kind of broke himself out of the pack, and you kind of were on a race of your own. And what do you felt about this track in terms of lines and everything else in comparison to any of the other tracks in the iRacing IndyCar Series?
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult track. It was really hard to get consistent every lap driving the same pace, and I knew beforehand that Adam Blocker was faster than me, so I just tried to tuck in behind him and start save fuel immediately after the start, so I could go 100% at the end.
Right, and talking about the race itself, we saw a very scary moment with John Downey on the corkscrew, where you had an incident. Your car basically touched with Downey. You had a little bit of a damaged wing on the front right side, if I recall correctly. But in my opinion, which sounds quite amazing to me, you still were able to keep with the very fast laps. I think you even broke 1.7 at one point, I think, with the lighter fuel. So how scared were you, or how concerned were you in comparison to Adam Crane? You lost a little bit of time to him because of the incident itself. Have you thought the car could have gone more damage, or you thought like, okay, the car is actually okay, not that highly damaged, I can still make it out alive?
I thought the podium positions was over for me after the contact, because it felt really hard, and I thought I had suspension damage, but I felt that something was wrong the laps after, but I didn't know what. Maybe side pod, but it turned out to just be a front wing, and I could come back from that and hold the second place from Adam.
Right, and talking about Adam, you're coming into the final round. You're basically in a head-to-head battle with Adam. I think we still have to see the results, of course, being computed, and see how much of the gap is between you and Adam. It is still very closely contested battle between you and him. Now you're coming into the final round. It's in the Roval. What do you expect out of the Roval, the Indianapolis track? Because it is a very different beast than the oval side, and it's definitely a different beast in comparison to Laguna Seca.
Yeah, I haven't been super fast at the Indy road course, so I definitely need to practice a lot for that week, and I just need to finish many positions ahead of Adam and hope for the best.
Right, and finally, just to wrap it all up and pass it up to Arjuna. He asked to Adam Blocker about the open wheel Indy 500. I know you're one of the guys that usually goes into the Indy 500 as well. Had a few opportunities in the past few years, and I think you've even competed in the open wheels as well. Are you excited about the opportunity of that second entry, the second outing of the open wheels 500?
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that race and competing for the win. And also I want to thank everyone at Powerslide Motorsports for making this possible, helping me out with setups and getting up the pace and everything.
Hey, Hugo, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it wasn't that.
It's okay. All right, Hugo, thanks a lot for taking your time over here to have a conversation with us, and good luck next week, and also in the Open Wheels 500 if you get the opportunity to drive it.
Thank you.
And so that was Hugo Olsen coming in second. Still going to be positioned in second place in the championship, but it was Adam Crane coming home in the third and final podium spot. Puts himself in a very, very strong position heading into that last round, leading the championship. And Adam, just wanted to ask you a question about that start. We saw a very, very bold move around the outside of turn number 1. Were you seeing that gap to Hugo Olsen, who started up in second, and thinking you needed to be as close as possible?
I was actually just seeing a hole that was open, especially on those starts. You really want to make sure that you're going where the cars aren't. So, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I did see a yellow Indy car to my left, but I was more concerned just making sure that I had a good start and didn't get involved in anything.
Well, it was a spectacular move for us watching at the start. A little bit of a slower race than we've seen in some of the other ones, but coming off the last round at Barber and the mistake you made there, you must feel very good about getting this third position right now and putting yourself in a strong position going into Indy.
Yeah, no, it feels good for sure. I mean, as far as this race goes, Adam was just imperious, like you'd sort of expect from him. Hugo was quick too. Those two Penske cars. Sorry, did I say Penske? I meant Power Slide. those two Power Slide cars are pretty quick. And yeah, just a little bit of a miscalculation on fuel at the end for us, but still to come home P3 with some good points heading into Indy means a lot.
And we saw David Soranzo struggling a little bit as well, so it's definitely looking like a two-horse race going into Indy. And I know we're harping on this, it's the chance for the championship. What are you looking to do now in the next few weeks as you prepare for what must be a very important week of racing?
Probably relax for a little bit after this one, take a couple deep breaths, and get to work on just building the quickest set for Indy that we can.
And before we let you go, we've asked the other two drivers about this as well, but it was announced a few weeks ago, the Open Wheels 500 returning for the 2020 edition, and delighted to be able to announce that RaceSpot TV is going to be bringing expanded coverage of that this year as well. But how excited are you about this event? It's an event that a lot of the community talks about in glowing terms, and I think an event that a lot of people often prefer to winning over the Indy 500, and I think that's a really incredible thing to say, given that we've only had one edition of the Open Wheels 500 so far.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for the Open Wheels 500. Definitely excited to be part of it and bring satellite racing into its first races at the 500 for that event. Just excited to get moving on that, but for the moment, my sights are squarely focused on running well at Indy.
Well, October 2nd is the last race of the season. Congrats on the podium finish here today, Adam, and we'll see you in a few weeks' time for the final race of the season.
Thanks a lot. Thanks everyone at RaceSpot for the broadcast. Thanks to Cade, my spotter/engineer for the race, and thanks to everyone at Satellite for helping with the set.
And so that was Adam Crane, third and final podium position. And also, interestingly here, Lorenzo, the third and final driver who finished on the lead lap here.
Yeah, the only three drivers finishing in the lead lap. Everybody else got overlapped. If we had 10 more laps, maybe 12 more laps, there was the opportunity of Blocker maybe lapping the entire field. But, well, this is unfortunately a long stint. This is not a full endurance stint. So, Blocker just being able to do his work and just put a strong outing and showcase how good of a driver he is.
And we say hello to you for the second time today. At the very end of the broadcast, it was a fun one, Lorenzo. We've said that a number of times, but
yeah,
we take one more look at the schedule here today. It's been 14 races that leads up to this point, and just one more race deciding the championship between two drivers, Hugo Olsen and Adam Crane. Based on what we saw here today, Olsen seemed to have a little bit more race pace. He talked about being less confident at Indy, though. I think the finale is going to be a really exciting broadcast, despite the fact it's going to be occurring at basically the same time as the real-life Harvest GP is running on NBC. So we might not have the same viewership that we'd expect here on RaceSpot TV, but I'm still expecting a lights-to-flag battle for a season-long championship.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting race nevertheless. Both drivers basically head-to-head. Of course, Soranzo still have the opportunity if he plays his cars right and the race plays out into his way. But of course, we have to be dead focused on Crane and Olsen. It's going to be a very closely contested battle. And I really am interested to see in the 2 weeks period how these drivers are going to do in the Roval. It's a different tracks, a different beast. Again, like I mentioned, in Laguna Seca, many passing points, tire consumption and fuel is going to be key over here. And I am really interested to see it. I might not be able to broadcast it, but I'm definitely going to watch it.
Well, that is October 2nd. Like we say, going to clash with the real-life Harvest GP, but we hope to see you there for what should be a very exciting broadcast. Thank you for joining us here for round number 14 of the IndyCar iRacing Series from the WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. From myself, Arjuna Kankipati, and not Sumil Arora, but Lorenzo Bonder instead. Thank you for joining us. It's been a great broadcast. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Please do join us. I'm really looking forward to that one, and I hope you'll be there.